Hello, Year 11. This is a new piece of technology that I'm trying to use in order to teach the content of the course that we've not been able to go through in class. Okay, it's took me a while to get my head around it, but hopefully this will work and it'll be an effective teaching tool that we can use in future. I didn't have to put the camera on, but I thought you'd be more likely to watch it and laugh at me if I did. So I'm going along with that. Now, we're on Act 3 of Doll's House, and so we need to make a little bit of progress with that. So what we've already gone through, and I've shared the PowerPoint with you, so all the links are on there and everything you need for this lesson is already on there. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of tasks. When the limits of my technology I found my boundaries, I couldn't make like a pause thing pop up. So I've gone for paper. When that happens, pause the video, all right? And you'll do the task. So just like we would in class, I'll introduce a task, I'll explain some things to you, and then you go and do the task. And you can do this in pairs, you can work with people at home. I don't know what your connections are or anything, but that's fine. And then once you finish the task, you just simply unpause the video and you move on to the next thing. All right, so we'll give this a go and let me know how you get on with it. All right, because I normally do videos, but I've never done it with resources as well. So this is kind of new for me. All right, now we've gone through a fair bit of Act 3. Of course, we did the test, we did the introduction, we looked at symbolism in this key in the opening of the scene, which we know Ibsen's a big proponent of. We look at Krogstad's complex character and how that character develops and why that's significant. We also looked at the structure of that scene and the conversation that he has with Christine and why that's significant in Act 3 in comparison to the marriage with the Helmers. There's a possible response there which you can go through and you can look at and just make sure you understand the key points. We did go through this in class, so that should be fine. We finished last time, I believe, on looking at the character of Krogstad and the audience reaction to him and the audience sympathy for that particular character. And it was quite interesting, actually. Most of you were quite sympathetic towards him, even though he was established primarily as an antagonist. So this is where we're going to move on to. We did talk about this in class, but I think it's just good to have it in our notes. So if you can make a note on the key points here, that'd be great. So we know the Tarantella comes from Italian folklore. If you were bitten by a particular wolf spider, which is named after the region, people believe that you got a hysterical condition known as tarantism, and that you would need to keep dancing in order to prevent yourself from succumbing to the venom. So this has become a folk dance, essentially, and it's something that Nora picks up on her travels, on her honeymoon. Now, I want you, and we have talked about this, so this is just for purely for revision purposes, I want you to have a look at the video. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but just have an idea of what the Tarantella is. It's not great, but it's the best example I could find. And also think about why Ibsen includes that in the play and the symbolic relevance, which we talked about. Remember this idea that if Nora ceases to perform, that she will then come to her symbolic demise. All right, so that's an important idea, and the Tarantella is quite important because it also adds to the idea of performativity, to illusion versus reality, and that's something. This idea of living in a fantasy world is something that's very, very important in Act 3. It's a key theme that's really, really developed here. So I'm going to pause. And you can watch the video and then just make a quick note on the Tarantella, and especially its symbolic relevance, because it's very, very important. All right. I'll pause as well. Unpause. So there we go. Right. So what do Torvald's fantasies uncover? So we need to understand what the concept of a fantasy is. So a fantasy is a situation imagined by an individual expresses certain desires or aims. All right. They can involve situations that are highly unlikely or unrealistic. They can also be sexual in nature, But the more basic meaning, the one that's particularly relevant to us, is something that's not real, which is a very clear reflection, or if we think about it, of the Helmets marriage and all the assumptions that it's and misunderstandings that it's built upon. When that veil falls down at the end of Act 3, that's when we're going to see some very revelatory scenes. All right. So there's a quote there by Erik Erikson, who's a developmental psychologist, hard to say. In everyday life, individuals often find their thoughts pursue a series of fantasies concerning things they wish they could do or wish they had done. Fantasies of control or of sovereign choice, or daydreams, if you wish. All right, and that's probably something we can relate to. So the quotation here, in the next slides that we're going to be looking at, Torvald's fantasies that he explains to Nora, they are very, very telling, and we need to unpick these a little bit. So that's what we're going to be looking at. All right. So first of all is, what can you infer about Torvald's aims and desires? That's a straightforward English language question, literature question, isn't it? But the extension I put on there is, what particular images support those interpretations? These are the things that are really, really good for exams, because they're really short quotes, they're images, so they're easy to remember. All right, so even if you can't remember the exact phrasing, you can paraphrase it. And you can drop these into your essays to show that you understand the images and the symbolism in the play as well. All right, so let's have a look at the first one. So consider why Torvald prefers this idealized version of Nora that is cemented in the past. Is the reality of Nora enough for Torvald, and why are secrets so appealing to him? So I'm pretending that we're secretly in love, secretly engaged, and nobody suspects there's anything between us. I pretend that you are my young bride and that I'm taking you home for the first time, quite alone with your young and trembling loveliness. All evening I've been longing for you and nothing else. So what I'd like you to do now is pause in a second and tell me what it is about, what this tells us about Nora's conception of Nora, and also what these images suggest. Is there anything that's a little bit unsettling about these images, or anything we can draw out of this confession from Torvald? Okay, so pause, do the task, and then we'll carry on. Hello. Right then, so this is quite a telling quotation. What we've got here is this idea of secrecy. Secrets are exciting, all right? Why would Torvald want that sort of excitement and secrecy in his married life? They've been married for many years at this point. They've got 3 children. It's as though the things he loves about Nora are very surface level, they're very superficial, and they're to do with innocence and helplessness. We've also got the idea of being the young bride and having their marriage night together. So this idea of sexual conquest is important for Torvald's fantasy as well. Now, this is problematic, it could be argued, in the sense that the reality of Nora, the reality of their marriage that they've had together all this time, should be the real reason why you love someone, because of what Nora's sacrificed and what she's done for the children, how she's raised them, how she's looked after the home, how she's cared for Torvald. And you would think those sacrifices would be appreciated. This is foreshadowing, all right, because we know that later on in the play, this is one of the major things, this lack of appreciation, lack of understanding exactly what it is that Nora has sacrificed, and the fact that Torvald is not willing to do it himself in return, is a major catalyst in Nora's final change and final decision-making process to leave. It's as though that the reality of Nora isn't enough, and that he has to fabricate this fictionalized version, which is, sexualized, objectified, and clandestine, secretive, all right, and all the associated excitements, as though that their marriage is no longer now exciting for him. And while people in long-term relationships might be able to relate to the fact that things do tend to calm down after a period of time of being married. Things can get a little bit staid. That's not a reason to not sort of appreciate that person or to not love that person. So it shows a very, very shallow side to Torvald's appreciation of Nora. Let's move on to the quick note. He calls it his capricious little Capri girl, all right? And this is a nice intertextual allusion, all right? It's a dual meaning. Capri is the island where the sirens of Greek mythology would lure sailors to their death with their beautiful appearance and song. Think about that beautiful appearance and song, but actually following that logically through will lead to your demise, all right? So what is it Ibsen saying there? It's quite an obvious point. The image clearly presents Nora as a powerfully seductive force in Torvald's eyes. However, capricious also means changeable. All right, so it's again one of his sort of sexist comments that he makes about Nora, that she changes her mind frequently. But also there's an ironic level to it, suggesting that Nora is going through a period of transition, that she's beginning to change her mind about the relationship she's in, about the man that she's married to. Multiple interpretations, that's what we want to see with these important elements of the play, all right? Dropping these into essays, just like we did with our last coursework piece, is something that examiners really, really like to see, all right? So don't just give me one interpretation of a quote or a symbol or an idea. Try and give me a couple, 2 or 3 in there, all right? It's really going to help develop your analysis. Let's look at the second quote. So Nora, many's the time I wish you were threatened by some terrible danger so I could risk everything, body and soul, for your sake. Okay, so we've got a typical knight in shining armor fantasy going on here. That could seem initially as quite nice, that he wants to make sure that Nora's safe and that he could prove and demonstrate his undying love for her. We might think that's almost quite romantic. However, let's have a look at the power relations going on here, all right? Where does this position Nora in relation to Torvald, okay? How does it make him appear, and how does it make Nora appear? Think about the old Super Mario games, all right? Mario has to run into the castle and rescue Princess Toadstool, I think it is. What's the power level there? Who's the protagonist? Who's the important person? Who's got the power in that situation? And who's the weak, vulnerable person? All right. So we're going to have another pause. I want you to answer those questions in your notes for the second quotation, and then we'll have a quick chat about it. Okay. Pause. Hello. Right. So I've included some notes here for a possible response. So when we first see Torvald in Act 1, he seems a bit of a pushover. There's a comedic element in Nora's blatant manipulation of him. I remember watching it in class a couple of years. Said she's very funny, she's very humorous. Their interaction seems quite playful. In Act 2, we see a most forceful and assertive side to Torvald. So although Torvald is quite a static character, and he's not very dynamic, compared to someone like Nora, of course, or Krogstad, we do see some subtle changes in his characterization that are important to track. The principles on which their marriage is based begin to be uncovered, and this is what we need to pay attention to, all right? Because, again, constant criticism that we get about Nora's character is that she undergoes this sudden and miraculous transformation. And if you read the play in Act 3, and if you read the play carefully, you'll see that there's a lot of foreshadowing, there's a lot of signposting that things are going to be changing with her opinions and attitudes towards her marriage throughout the play. Here in Act 3, Torvald's characterization takes on a more sinister and darker tone with his somewhat perverse sexual advances towards Nora. He treats her like his possession, like the young woman that he first acquired many years ago. This also contributes to demonstrating Torvald's control over Nora. He dresses Nora in a costume of his choosing. He teaches her how to dance in the manner he finds desirable. He appears to enjoy these fantasies because they confirm his position as authoritative and Nora as dependent and subservient. All right. It's also clear that Torvald gains pleasure and pride from his wife's performance. So in this element, there's a trophy aspect to Nora's status as his wife. because they publicly reflect on him. So everyone's very proud of her dance, and that's what he wants to do, he wants to show her off. They also suggest there's something deficient in Nora as well, and that's important, that she's not enough, that what she's done as a person, as an individual, is not enough. She has to engage in these performances like a doll. All right. So this idea that we've seen all the way through the play of a doll's house and Nora performing, this is really, really, really coming to a head now as we approach the resolution of the play structurally. Okay, and we'll talk more about that next time. Attraction and love for her seem to be embedded in something false, something unreal. All right. So again, we're working strongly in the theme of appearances versus reality here. Okay. So can you make detailed notes on this? Because it's a major, major, major thematic element to A Doll's House. It's probably the most important one. Okay. So we've got a quick note on, I don't need to pause there, but just make sure that your notes are comprehensive and detailed on this point. All right. I think we've explained it in quite a bit of detail. So Dr. Rank, we've talked about him before. He leaves, of course, his little cross, doesn't he, before he leaves, to let them know of his impending doom. So we said, obviously, the old wise man figure, very, very common narrative and also theatrical convention at the time, still is as well. And we all came up with our own examples the other day in class, didn't we? We talked about a lot of this before, but we'll just go through it. So as an educated man of high societal standing, profession, Dr. Rank exists as the embodiment of patriarchal authority. He clearly calls on Nora and Torvald to spend a happy moment with them before he undertakes a period of self-imposed exile until he inevitably succumbs to his illnesses. He confirms that this is intention with the posting card of a black cross, so it's very obvious symbolism there. Dr. Rank has inherited disease of the spine from his father, very heavily suggested from sexually transmitted disease, and this introduces another very, very important element. And it all is very beautifully structured, this play. Everything comes together right at the very end. Thematically, if you followed the idea of the corruption of patriarchy, if you followed the idea of illusion and dishonesty, if you followed the idea of lack of agency and control and freedom of will, you'll see all these coalesce in Nora's argument with Torvald at the end of the play. So the suggestion is that we're all capable of inheriting terrible things from our parents or guardians, an idea that becomes increasingly important, as I've just said, but also that there's something rotten at the core of the patriarchal system of governance or societal framework. This also is, in terms of theatrical conventions, it's a version of the figure of the wise old man archetype, which is very, very common at the time and still is to some extent. Now, we've talked about that before, but there's some nice notes there. Just make sure that you have those points down and you understand them. And this is the last slide, and it's the last thing I want to do. So what is the miracles? She says a miraculous thing is going to happen. We've talked about this in class. What is it that she's waiting for, she's hoping for? It's not an abstract thing. It's a very, very specific thing that she's actually waiting for. In her wildest dreams, what is it that Torvald is going to offer to do for her? All right. Missing a question mark there. It's very annoying. Sorry. What is it he's going to do or say to make everything better? What is Nora hoping for above everything else? All right. And we know what it is. We know because we talked about this a couple of times in class. But it's the idea that he's willing to sacrifice himself for her, just as his second fantasy that we looked at just a second ago suggested that he wanted to do. This is what he wants. He wants to throw himself on the line. He wants to show how much he loves Nora. So what I want you to do is a bit of a creative task here to finish. And this is the last thing we're going to be doing in this session. Couple of things. The first thing is I want you on the whiteboards to make a list of all the sacrifices that she has made for Torvald. How might he resolve the situation? We know that, all right, but just get it down in your notes. Remember that she's willing to die and save both Torvald and the family. What is she asking him to do? It's not die, it's much less. Write the scene between Nora and Torvald in dramatic dialogue that she wants to happen. So we never get to see this. This doesn't happen because Torvald doesn't do this, all right? He's got very, very different priorities. And it's just a short creative task. It's just 200 to 300 words. And what I want you to do is I want you to write a fantasy, all right, Nora's fantasy this time, about Torvald coming to save her and what that conversation might be, how he might handle it, what would be her perfect resolution to all these problems that she's found herself in. All right. So it's a creative writing task. It's hopefully a bit of fun, but it'll help you really understand what it is she's waiting for and why she's so crushingly devastated at the end of the play when the opposite happens to her, which is what we'll look at next time. I've added a few sentence starters. How long have you had to carry this burden? Is this all true? You managed to pay back all the money by yourself. There is nothing for you to worry about any longer, Nora. All right. So where's that honesty that we've always talked about? Where's that sacrifice? Where's this fact that he wants to support his wife and look after her? All right. The way that she sacrificed so much for him. All right. How is he going to stand up to Krogstad? Okay. Don't worry about the acting out with a partner. We're doing that. All right. But if someone does a really, really nice job of this, I will have a quick look at them. I might be able to give out a couple of nice positive comments. All right. So that's the last task today. I'm not going to say pause because it's the end of the video, but that's the task, the final task that I want you to do. All right, today, and I will create a assignment on Google Classroom where you can submit your imagined discussion, the good ending. All right, let's do the good ending, okay, and then we'll look at the real ending, which is not so good. I mean, it's good, it's just not good for Nora. All right, so thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope you've been suitably entertained and had a good laugh at my expense. And I hope that these notes are helpful. If you've got any feedback or you just want to say what you think, don't give me a thumbs up or subscribe or anything like that. Don't. But just drop me an email and let me know how you found this, if it was okay or if it was too difficult. Just let me know. All right. Hopefully it'll be good. All right. Well, thank you very much. All the best, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Keep an eye on Google Classroom. All right. Bye-bye.